Billionaire lost his fortune on purpose to test love. Her wedding day betrayal left him speechless. The black car stopped at the curb, and the man inside did not move. Outside, rain slid down the window like slow tears. Inside, the man's hands stayed tight on his knees. He stared at the bright hotel entrance across the street, where people laughed under umbrellas and stepped into warm light. He watched a couple run together, shoulders pressed close, their faces turned toward each other like nothing else mattered. His phone buzzed again. He did not answer. The driver glanced back once, careful and quiet, then looked forward again. The air in the car felt heavy, like it held too many unsaid words. The man's name was Adrian Cole. To most people who knew him, he was calm, controlled, and hard to read. Tonight, he looked like a man holding himself together by force. Across the street, a large banner hung above the entrance. Cole Foundation Gala. Adrian stared at the banner until his eyes burned. His phone buzzed again. He finally looked down. A message from Vanessa. "Where are you? Everyone is asking." "Don't embarrass me tonight." He swallowed. His mouth was dry. Vanessa had said the same kind of words many times before. Always about what people thought. Always about the picture, the scene, the story they were selling to the world. He typed nothing. He locked the screen and let the phone fall into his palm like it weighed too much. The driver cleared his throat. "Sir, should I pull up to the entrance?" Adrian did not answer at first. He listened to the rain. He listened to the distant music through the glass, faint and expensive. Then he said no. The driver nodded. He knew better than to ask more. Adrian leaned back. He closed his eyes for a moment, and the memory came without warning, sharp and fresh like a cut. 2 months ago, in a penthouse living room with walls of glass, Vanessa had stood by the wine shelf holding a crystal glass like it was part of her hand. She smiled while she spoke, and her words sounded soft, but they hit hard. "It's not that I don't love you," she had said. "It's that I need security." Adrian had looked at her and waited. She walked closer, heels clicking, and placed her free hand on his chest like she owned the space there. "Adrian," she said gently, "do you know what people say about you? They say you're careful, cold, like you're always watching, like you're testing people." He had stared at her, and something in him had gone quiet. Not angry, just tired. Vanessa had smiled wider, her eyes shiny. "But it's okay. That's why I'm good for you. I can help you loosen up. I can help you live," he had asked. "Is that why you're here?" She blinked once, then laughed as if he had made a joke. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You know what I mean?" Then she added almost casually, "My father asked about the trust, by the way. He just wants to understand how serious you are about us." Adrian had felt something twist in his stomach. His voice had stayed calm. "Your father asked about my trust." Vanessa had rolled her eyes. "He's protecting me, like any father would." Adrian had nodded slowly. He had looked around at the expensive room, the art on the walls, the city lights below. He had built this life, every inch of it, every glass panel, every door, every view. And yet in that moment he had felt like a stranger in his own home. He had asked, "If I didn't have any of this, would you still be here?" Vanessa had stared at him like he had spoken in another language. Then she smiled again and said, "Why would you even ask that?" Because he needed to know. Because he had asked the same question in his head for years and it never went away. Adrian opened his eyes in the car and stared at the hotel again. The truth was, he had stopped believing in love a long time ago. Not because he hated it, not because he thought it was fake, but because every time he got close, money stepped between him and the other person like a third body in the room. He had seen it too many times. The way people laughed louder at his jokes when they knew his name. The way women touched his arm in public just enough for cameras. The way friends expected favors and called it friendship. The way even kindness sometimes came with a hidden price tag. And he remembered his mother. She had lived in a small apartment above a bakery. Flour had always clung to her hands. She smelled like warm bread and soap. When Adrian was young, she had hugged him so tight he could not breathe, and he had loved that feeling. His father had left when Adrian was 7, just gone. His mother had not cried in front of him, not once. She had worked 2 jobs. She had smiled when she could. She had told Adrian, "Don't let the world make you hard." He had promised her he wouldn't. Then she got sick when he was 18. The hospital bills came like a storm. Adrian worked nights and went to school during the day. He watched his mother get smaller in the bed. He listened to doctors speak in careful voices. One night she had held his hand and whispered, "Promise me you'll be loved for who you are, not for what you can give." Adrian had nodded, tears burning his eyes. "I promise." She had died 2 weeks later. He had built everything after that. He had fought his way through college, then business, then risk after risk. He had learned how to read people fast. He had learned how to hide pain behind calm eyes. He had learned how to win. And he had become the man the world called a billionaire. But his mother's last request stayed inside him like a small light. Quiet, persistent. Be loved for who you are, not for what you can give. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Vanessa. Adrian looked at it until it stopped ringing. He did not feel like a man with power right now. He felt like a man who was about to lose something, even if he didn't know what it was yet. The driver spoke again more softly. "Sir, they're waiting." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Let them." He looked down at his hands. He remembered what Vanessa had said at the penthouse after that question about staying if he had nothing. She had leaned in, kissed him lightly, and whispered, "Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere." But her eyes had flicked just for a second toward the safe built into the wall. And Adrian had seen it. That small glance had done more damage than a scream. Because it told him she was not looking at him. She was looking at what he kept. Now in the car, he took a slow breath. The rain was still falling. The gala music was still playing. The world was still spinning like normal. But something inside him had reached a breaking point. How many times could he ask himself the same question and never get a real answer? How many people had he let close because he wanted to believe, was love even possible when money was always in the room? He opened the car door. The driver quickly leaned forward. Sir Adrian stepped out into the rain before the driver could finish. Water hit his face, cold and honest. He stood on the sidewalk and looked at the bright entrance again. He could walk and smile and play the role they expected. Or he could do something else. He took out his phone and opened a different contact. A man named Graham. Graham was his lawyer, his gatekeeper, the one person who knew how deep Adrian's trust issues went, because Graham had watched the contracts, the prenups, the quiet threats. Adrian typed a message with shaking fingers. "Call me, now." The reply came almost instantly. "Calling." Adrian lifted the phone to his ear. The rain pressed into his hair down his collar. Graham's voice came through. "Adrian, it's late. Is everything all right?" Adrian stared at the hotel doors. He saw Vanessa's world inside. Champagne, cameras, applause. He said very quietly, "No, it's not." Graham went silent for a beat. "What happened?" Adrian swallowed. His throat felt tight. "I want to disappear," Adrian said. "Not from the world. From this version of me." Graham's voice lowered. "Adrian, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," Adrian replied, "I want to live like I have nothing. I want to know who stays when there's nothing to gain." The rain ran down his face. He didn't wipe it away. Graham sounded careful now. "This is about Vanessa, isn't it?" Adrian's eyes stayed on the entrance. He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Graham exhaled. "That's a big move. People will notice." "Investors, media, I don't care," Adrian said, and his voice cracked just slightly. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep guessing if someone is holding my hand or holding my wallet." There was another pause, longer this time. Then Graham said, "If you do this, you need a plan. A clean plan. no mistakes. Adrian looked down at the wet pavement at his shoes getting soaked. He felt strangely alive. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm calling you." He lifted his gaze again. He watched the people inside, safe in warmth. He imagined walking in and smiling like nothing was wrong. Instead, he stepped backward into the shadows of the street. His decision began to form solid and dangerous, like a door closing. And as he turned away from the gala, Adrian felt the first sharp pull of fear, because he knew once he started, there might be no easy way back. He walked into the rain, leaving the bright hotel behind, while his phone stayed pressed to his ear. And Graham's voice came through low and serious. "Tell me exactly what you want to do." Adrian stopped under a streetlight. Water dripped from his hair. His hands trembled. He looked up at the dark sky and whispered as if the city itself might hear him. "I want to find out," he said, "if anyone can love me when I'm just Adrian." He ended the call and stood there alone in the rain while the music across the street kept playing. Then he took one more step away from his old life, and for the first time in years, he did not feel powerful. He felt terrified, and somehow hopeful. Adrian woke up to the sound of a dripping faucet, not the quiet, perfect silence of a penthouse, not the soft hum of a building staff already working before sunrise. This was a cheap apartment where every sound had its own sharp edge. He opened his eyes and stared at a ceiling with a small brown stain near the corner. The stain looked like an old map. He watched it for a moment, as if it might tell him where he was. Then he remembered. He was in Unit 3B of a two-story building above a closed laundry shop. The hallway smelled like detergent and old paint. The neighbors' footsteps were loud. The windows did not seal properly, so the winter air slipped in like it had a key. Adrian sat up on the thin mattress. His back hurt. He rubbed his face and exhaled slowly. He had been here for 12 days. 12 days since he had vanished from his own life. It had not been a dramatic escape with helicopters or secret islands. It had been paperwork clean and cold, done through Graham, and a few trusted people who did not talk. Adrian had stepped away from his company's daily operations. He had moved assets into legal structures that could not be traced to him easily. He had created a new identity that was still real, still legal, but not connected to the name Adrian Cole in any public way. In this version of his life, he was not Adrian Cole. He was Aaron Hale, a name that sounded like it belonged to someone who stood in line and paid full price. Someone who had no private elevator. Someone who could be ignored. He had cut his hair shorter. He wore plain clothes. He left his watch in a locked box at Graham's office. He had no driver, no security, no assistant. His phone was a basic one with a cheap case. And he had told Graham one rule: no updates unless something truly dangerous happened. So far, the world had not ended without him. That fact hurt more than he expected. Adrian swung his legs off the mattress and stood up. The floor was cold. He walked to the tiny bathroom and looked in the mirror. The face staring back still looked like him, but also not. Without the tailored suits, without the quiet confidence that came from power, he looked normal, tired, human. He brushed his teeth with a discount toothbrush and cold water. The tap did not heat properly. The water made his fingers ache. He remembered his penthouse bathroom, the warm floors, the thick towels. For a second, he felt a wave of anger at himself. This was his choice. He had wanted discomfort. He had wanted real. He pulled on jeans and a plain sweater and walked into the small kitchen. There was a cheap table, one chair, and a fridge that rattled like it might fall apart. He opened it and looked at the food, eggs, bread, a small carton of milk and leftover rice in a plastic container. He had learned quickly that groceries spoiled. He had also learned that he hated wasting food. In his old life, he never even saw the groceries. Someone else handled it. He only saw what was plated in front of him. Now he cracked 2 eggs into a pan and watched them sizzle. The smell was simple and warm. He ate standing up, leaning against the counter. It was not luxury, but it was real. And still, loneliness sat in the room with him. He checked his phone. No messages, no calls. Of course, the people who knew him as Adrian would not be calling Aaron. And the people who knew him as Adrian were not supposed to know where he was. But he still thought about Vanessa. He had not spoken to her since the night of the gala. He had simply stopped. No goodbye, no argument, just gone. At first, she had called and texted him like a storm. Then she had changed tactics. She had sent a long message saying she was worried. Then one saying she was angry. Then one saying she could not believe he would do this to her. Then one saying she had talked to her father and lawyers could be involved. That message had made Adrian's stomach go cold. Not please come back. Not are you okay. Just lawyers. After that, he had blocked the number. Sometimes he told himself it was cruel. Other times he told himself it was the cleanest way. But every morning he still woke up with a tight feeling in his chest. He washed the pan, dried it, and put it away. Then he grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The street was busy in the morning. People in work clothes moved fast. Some held coffee cups, some pushed strollers. A man shouted greetings to someone across the road. A bus hissed at the stop and opened its doors. Adrian walked with his hands in his pockets trying to blend in. 12 days ago, he would have stepped out into a lobby where someone greeted him by name. Now no one looked at him twice. It was strange, almost painful, but also freeing. He reached the corner cafe where he had started coming to every morning. It was not fancy. The tables were scratched. The menu was handwritten in marker. But the coffee was strong, and the owner did not care who you were. He stepped inside. Warmth hit his face. The smell of baked bread and coffee wrapped around him. Behind the counter, the barista glanced up. She was a young woman with tired eyes and quick hands. Her name tag said MIA. She had never asked him personal questions. She just remembered his order. "Morning," she said. Adrian nodded. "Morning." Same, she asked. He hesitated. For a moment, he missed the feeling of ordering anything without thinking about cost. Then he forced himself to stay in this life. "Same," he said. "Black coffee and a plain bagel." Mia tapped the register. "That'll be $5.60. Adrian pulled out cash. He still wasn't used to paying in cash. He was used to cards that never decline, accounts that never ran dry. But he had set himself a monthly budget like someone who had to think. He handed her the bills. Mia gave him change and slid the coffee over. "Busy today," she said, nodding at the line behind him. Adrian stepped to the side with his coffee and bagel. He found his usual seat near the window. The chair wobbled. He sat anyway. He watched people outside. He watched a woman argue with her teenage son. He watched a man run for the bus. He watched a couple share one umbrella, and he felt something tight in his chest again. He wanted love, but he did not know how to trust it. He had money, but he had hidden it like a shameful secret. He had power, but he had left it behind like a heavy coat he couldn't carry anymore. He took a sip of coffee. It was too hot. He burned his tongue slightly and winced. A small, stupid pain, but it made him feel alive. After breakfast, he walked to the job he had taken. He had not needed it for money, but he needed it for reality. He worked at a building supply store across town. It was a place where men in dusty boots bought wood, paint, and tools. The work was physical. The pay was low. The manager did not care about his past. The manager's name was Rick. He was loud, impatient, and always chewing gum. When Adrian first applied, Rick had looked at him up and down. "You ever done this kind of work?" Rick asked. Adrian had said, "I can learn." Rick had shrugged. "If you don't complain, you'll last longer than most." So Adrian had taken the job. Now he walked into the store through the employee entrance. He put on a name badge that said Aaron. It felt like wearing someone else's skin. Rick spotted him and waved. "Hey, Hale. You're on aisle 7 today. Stock came in. Move your ass." Adrian nodded. Got it. He headed to aisle 7 and began moving boxes. His arms strained. Sweat built under his shirt. He lifted, carried, stacked. At first, the work had shocked him. His body was not used to it. But after 12 days, his muscles were adapting. His hands had small cuts now. His nails were not perfect. He didn't hate it. He hated what it reminded him of. That he could have lived this way his whole life like his mother had. That he could have stayed in that apartment above the bakery working until his bones hurt. He stacked a box and paused for a breath. A coworker passed by. His name was Jay. He was in his early 20s, always joking, always moving. Jay slapped Adrian lightly on the shoulder. "Yo, Aaron! You're quiet as hell, man. You okay?" Adrian nodded. "Yeah." Jay grinned. "You don't talk much, but you work. That's rare." "You got a girl?" Adrian froze for half a second. Jay didn't notice. He just kept smiling. Adrian forced a small shrug. "No." Jay whistled. "What? No way. With that face, man, you got to get out more." Adrian looked away, pretending to focus on the boxes. His chest tightened again. A girl. A woman. Love. He wasn't sure he knew how to do it without money poisoning it. At lunch, he sat alone in the break room with a cheap sandwich. He watched the other workers laugh and talk. They complained about rent, about bosses, about family drama. No one talked about private jets. No one talked about investments. They talked about being tired. Adrian found himself listening more than eating. A man across the table complained, "My girlfriend wants a bigger place, but man, how everything costs too much." Another guy laughed. "Tell her to marry a rich dude." They all laughed. Adrian didn't. He chewed slowly, his stomach tight. After work, his body ached. He walked home in the cold and past a jewelry store window. Inside, necklaces sparkled under bright lights. A man in a suit stood close to a woman and pointed at a ring. Adrian stopped walking. He watched for a moment. The woman's eyes lit up. She touched the glass as if she could already feel the ring on her finger. Adrian felt a sharp sting behind his ribs. He turned away and kept walking. At home, he cooked rice and vegetables. He sat at the small table and ate slowly. The room felt too quiet. He turned on the TV for noise, but it only made him more lonely. The news showed a clip of his company's headquarters. A reporter spoke about shifts in leadership and mystery changes. They did not say his name, but he could hear it behind every word. He turned the TV off. He sat in silence again. Then his phone buzzed. He stared at it. Unknown number. His heart jumped, stupidly hopeful. He answered. "Hello." A woman's voice came through, slightly out of breath. "Hi, is this Aaron Hale?" Adrian frowned. "Yes. This is the landlord. Your rent is due in 3 days." "Just reminding you." Adrian swallowed. "Yes. I know." "Okay," she said, quick and businesslike. "Don't be late." The call ended. Adrian stared at the phone. His chest felt hollow. He had hoped for love, but all he had was rent reminders. He went to bed early. He lay on the thin mattress and listened to the neighbor's TV through the wall. He listened to a couple arguing in the hallway. He listened to a baby crying somewhere in the building. He closed his eyes. His mind would not rest. His thoughts kept moving back to Vanessa. Her smile, her touch, the way she always wanted pictures, the way she always wanted proof. He remembered the way her voice changed when she talked about money. Softer, excited, hungry. He wondered what she was doing now. He wondered if she missed him or if she missed the life. He turned on his side, gripping the edge of the blanket like it could hold him together. Then sometime after midnight, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number he did not recognize. "Hi. I think you dropped this earlier today." A picture followed. It was his small notepad, the one he used at work to write aisle numbers and inventory codes. But inside the notepad between the pages was something else, a folded piece of paper, a small sketch. He had drawn it without thinking 2 nights ago, a simple drawing of his mother's bakery sign from memory. The letters were uneven, but the feeling in it was clear. Adrian's throat tightened. He typed back confused. "Where did you find it?" The reply came. At the cafe. It slipped off your table. I'm there most mornings. You look like you're carrying something heavy. Adrian stared at that last sentence. He didn't know why, but his eyes burned. He typed slowly. Thank you. Can I pick it up tomorrow? A pause. Then sure. I'll be there at 8. Same place. I'm Lena. Adrian read the name twice. Lena. He held the phone in his palm and felt something shift inside him, small but real. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what she wanted. But for the first time in 12 days, a stranger had noticed his weight, not his value. He set the phone down beside him, and in the dark, his heart beat a little faster. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "Okay." Then he closed his eyes, and for the first time in days, he fell asleep without dreaming about money. Adrian arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. He told himself it was just to make sure he got his notepad back. Nothing more. But he chose a cleaner sweater than usual, and he washed his hair twice in the tiny shower that barely worked. The bell above the cafe door rang as he stepped inside. The place looked the same as always. Scratched tables, warm lights, the smell of coffee and bread. But something felt different, like the room was waiting. He scanned the tables. Near the window, a woman sat with a notebook open and a cup of tea cooling beside her. She wore a simple coat and had her dark hair tied back loosely. A few strands had escaped and brushed her cheek. She looked up when he walked in. Their eyes met. She smiled small and unsure, then raised her hand slightly. Adrian felt his chest tighten. He walked toward her, suddenly aware of his steps, his hands, his breath. "Hi," she said when he reached the table. Her voice was calm, but there was a soft edge to it. "You must be Aaron." "Yes," Adrian replied. "And you're Lena." She nodded. "That's me." She picked up the notepad and slid it across the table. "You dropped this." He took it carefully. "Thank you. I didn't even realize." She shrugged lightly. "You look distracted." Adrian hesitated. "I'm sorry if I caused trouble." "No trouble," Lena said. She smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. "I almost didn't look inside, but it fell open." He stiffened slightly. "You saw the drawing?" She nodded, watching his face. "I did. It was nice." He wasn't sure what to say. "It's nothing special." "I disagree," she said gently. "It felt personal." Adrian swallowed. He didn't correct her. Mia called out from behind the counter. "Aaron, same order." He glanced over, then back at Lena. "If you don't mind." "Go ahead," Lena said. He ordered his usual. When he returned, Lena was stirring her tea, slow and thoughtful. "So," she said, "you come here every morning?" "Yes." She smiled faintly. "Me too. Before work." "What do you do?" he asked. She hesitated for just a moment. "I work at a bridal shop." The word hit him harder than he expected. "Bridal," he repeated. She nodded. "Dresses, alterations, sometimes customer support. Whatever is needed." Adrian took a sip of coffee, buying himself a second. "That must be interesting." Lena let out a short laugh. "That's one word for it." She looked out the window. "Some days it's beautiful. Some days it's exhausting." "Why exhausting?" She looked back at him. Her expression changed, becoming more careful. "Because weddings aren't really about love anymore. They're about pressure." He watched her closely. "Pressure from who?" "From everyone," she said. "Family, society, money. People don't ask, 'Do you love him?' They ask, 'Can he provide?'" Adrian felt something stir inside him. She continued, "I see girls cry in the dressing rooms. Not happy tears, scared ones." He didn't speak. He didn't want to break the moment. Lena noticed his silence. "Sorry, that sounded bitter." "No," Adrian said quickly. It sounded honest. She studied him for a second. "You're different." He tensed. "Different how you listen," she said simply. "Most people just wait for their turn to talk." Adrian looked down at his coffee. "I've had practice being quiet." She smiled softly at that. They sat in a comfortable silence for a few seconds. Outside, people passed by the window moving fast. Lena broke the quiet. You work at the supply store, right? Yes. I've seen you walking that way in the evenings, she said. You look tired. He laughed under his breath. I am. She tilted her head. Why do you do it? He frowned slightly. What do you mean? You don't look like someone who has to, she said carefully. No offense? None taken, he thought. I needed something simple, he said. Something real. Lena nodded slowly like she understood more than he had said. My parents used to say the same thing she said, before they divorced. Adrian looked up. I'm sorry. She waved it off gently. It was a long time ago, but it changed how I see things. How so? She folded her hands together on the table. My mother married for love. My father married for ambition. Guess which one stayed? Adrian didn't answer. They fought about money all the time, Lena continued, or more like the lack of it. My father felt small. My mother felt trapped. She took a breath. After the divorce, my mother worked 2 jobs. She never complained, but I saw the weight on her. Adrian's chest tightened. That sounds familiar. She met his eyes. It does. He nodded once. My mother worked a lot too. Something unspoken passed between them. Lena glanced at the time. I should go soon. Work starts early. Of course, Adrian said, disappointed. She stood and put on her coat. I'm glad I found you. So am I, he said, surprising himself with how true it sounded. She hesitated, then said, Do you want to walk together, just to the corner? Yes, he said immediately. They walked out into the cold together. The morning air was sharp but not unpleasant. They moved side by side, not touching, but aware of each other. At the corner, Lena stopped. Well, she said, this is me. Adrian nodded. Thank you again. For the notepad. She smiled. You're welcome. She hesitated, then added, maybe we could get coffee again sometime. On purpose. His heart beat faster. I'd like that. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Here. He took it and typed in his number. As he handed it back, their fingers brushed. It was brief, but it sent a quiet shock through him. See you, Aaron, she said. See you, Lena. She walked away, blending into the crowd. Adrian stood there for a moment, watching her go. He felt lighter, and that scared him, because she didn't know who he really was, and he wasn't sure what would happen when she did. Adrian told himself he would be careful. That was the promise he repeated every morning as the days passed. Careful with his words, careful with his habits, careful with his heart. But being careful did not stop him from thinking about Lena all the time. They met for coffee again 2 days later, then again the week after that. Sometimes in the morning before work, sometimes in the evening when the cafe was quieter and the lights felt softer. They talked about small things at first, work stories, annoying customers, weather that never seemed right. Then slowly, without any clear moment where it changed, the conversations became deeper. One evening, they sat at a corner table while rain tapped against the window. Lena stirred her tea but didn't drink it. Do you ever feel like you're living the wrong life? She asked suddenly. Adrian looked at her. What do you mean? She shrugged. Like, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but it doesn't feel like it belongs to you. He let out a slow breath. Yes, she smiled sadly. I thought so. Why, he asked. Because you look like someone who's pretending, she said gently. Not in a bad way, just protecting something. His heart jumped. What makes you say that? She met his eyes. Because I do the same. He stayed quiet. My mother wants me to marry well, Lena continued. Not rich, just safe, predictable, someone who won't leave. Do you want that? Adrian asked. She thought for a moment. I want love, but I'm scared love isn't enough. The words settled between them. Adrian wanted to tell her everything right then. about the penthouse, the company, the money he had hidden away like a dangerous weapon. But he didn't. He remembered his promise to himself, to test love, to know. So he stayed silent. Instead, he said, I think fear ruins a lot of good things. Lena smiled softly. You sound older than you are. He laughed quietly. Life will do that. Their relationship grew in small, steady steps. They walked together after work. They shared cheap meals in his apartment, sitting on the floor because he didn't own a couch. Lena teased him about his terrible cooking. He teased her about her obsession with neatly folding napkins. She saw his life as it was now. The small space, the simple clothes, the early mornings and sore muscles. She never complained. Sometimes she brought groceries without asking. Sometimes she cooked while he watched, pretending not to be impressed. One night while washing dishes together, she said, You know you don't live like someone who wants more. Adrian froze for half a second. Is that a bad thing? No, she said quickly. It's just rare. He nodded, his hands under running water. Another time they passed an expensive restaurant downtown. Lena slowed her steps. I used to dream of places like that, she said. Now they just make me tired. Why? Adrian asked. Because I see couples inside who don't even look at each other, she said. They're just sitting next to money. Adrian felt a chill. Weeks passed, then months. The lie became heavier. Every time Lena talked about her future, Adrian felt the truth pressing against his chest like it wanted out. One evening, they sat on the edge of his bed, backs against the wall. Lena held his hand. My mother wants to meet you, she said. Adrian's heart skipped. Me, yes, Lena said, smiling. She thinks you're grounding. He forced a smile. That's one way to describe me. The dinner went better than he expected. Lena's mother was polite but watchful. She asked about his job, his plans, his family. Adrian answered honestly but carefully. I work hard, he said. I don't have much, but I value loyalty. Her mother nodded slowly. Loyalty matters. When they left, Lena squeezed his hand. She likes you. Adrian didn't know whether to feel relief or guilt. The turning point came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. They were walking through a park, leaves crunching under their feet. Children laughed nearby. An old man fed birds from his palm. Lena stopped suddenly. She turned to Adrian, her face serious. Aaron, she said, can I ask you something important? He nodded. Of course. Are you ashamed of where you come from? She asked. The question caught him off guard. No. Why? Because sometimes, she said carefully, it feels like you're hiding. Not from me, from yourself. His throat tightened. He looked at her. Really looked at her. The worry in her eyes, the sincerity. This was the moment, he thought. This was where he could tell the truth. He imagined her reaction. Shock, doubt, questions, fear that everything had been a test. And fear rose in him too. Fear that if he told her now, he would never know if she loved him before the truth. So he made a choice. I'm not ashamed, he said slowly. I just don't think my past defines me. Lena searched his face. Then she nodded. Okay. That night as they lay side by side, she rested her head on his chest. I feel safe with you, she whispered. Adrian closed his eyes. He felt anything but safe. The proposal happened a month later. It was not planned. Not in a restaurant, not with music or cameras. They were sitting on the floor again, eating takeout. Lena was laughing about a customer who cried over the wrong veil. Adrian watched her laugh, and something inside him broke open. He stood up suddenly. Lena blinked. What's wrong? He reached into the drawer where he kept his few important things. He pulled out a small ring. It was simple, silver, not expensive. He had bought it with his errand money. He knelt in front of her. Lena's laughter stopped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Adrian, she stopped herself, smiling. Aaron, what are you doing? His voice shook. I don't have much. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want it with you. Tears filled her eyes. Will you marry me? He asked. For a second time stopped. Then Lena nodded hard. Yes. She pulled him up and hugged him tight. Adrian held her, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. People outside cheered for something else. Fireworks, a game, a celebration he didn't see. He only felt the weight of the ring on her finger, and the weight of the lie still between them. The weeks after the engagement moved faster than Adrian expected. Once the word wedding entered the air, everything seemed to change shape around it. Conversations became plans. Plans became decisions. Decisions became pressure. Lena was happy, truly happy. Adrian could see it in the way she hummed while folding laundry, and the way she stared at the ring on her finger when she thought he wasn't looking. He loved seeing her like that. But love did not erase fear. They began planning with what little money Adrian allowed himself to show. A small ceremony, a simple venue, nothing extravagant. I don't want anything big, Lena said one evening as they sat at the table with notebooks open. Just something honest. Adrian smiled. I like that, but not everyone agreed. Lena's mother was careful with her words, but Adrian could hear the concern underneath. A small wedding is fine, she said during a phone call. But security matters too, Lena. Stability. Lena's jaw tightened. Aaron is stable. Her mother paused. Is he? Adrian stood in the kitchen, listening quietly as Lena spoke for him. He works hard. He shows up. He's kind, Lena said. That's more than most. Her mother sighed. I just don't want you to struggle like I did. After the call, Lena leaned against the counter, rubbing her forehead. She means well, Lena said. I know, Adrian replied, but he felt the pressure growing. Money entered the room, even when no one said the word. When they looked at venues, Lena chose the modest ones, but her eyes lingered on the larger halls just for a second. When they talked about the future, she spoke about dreams that cost more than his current life allowed. I'd love a place with more light, she said once. Maybe a small balcony. Adrian nodded. Someday. She smiled, but there was something uncertain behind it. He hated that. He hated being the reason for doubt. They argued once, just once, but it stayed with him. It happened over a guest list. We can't invite everyone, Adrian said calmly. It's too expensive. Lena crossed her arms. I know. I'm not asking for everyone. It feels like you are, he said more sharply than he meant to. Her eyes flashed. So now I'm unreasonable. He immediately regretted it. That's not what I meant. She looked away. Sometimes it feels like you don't trust me. The words cut deep. I trust you, he said quickly. Then why does it feel like you're always holding back, she asked. Like there's a wall I can't see. He couldn't answer. That night she cried quietly beside him. He held her and whispered apologies he wasn't sure were enough. Still the days went on. They met with a small planner. They chose flowers. Lena laughed with the florist like a girl again. Adrian watched her and wondered, not for the first time, if he was doing the right thing. Was love supposed to feel like this? Or was fear poisoning something good? One evening as they walked home from work together, Lena said softly, Do you ever think about what happens after the wedding? Adrian asked. Yes, she said. Life. He smiled faintly. All the time. What do you see? She asked. He thought carefully. I see peace. I see waking up next to you. I see working, coming home, building something together. She nodded slowly. I want that too. Then she added almost in a whisper. I just don't want to be scared anymore. He stopped walking, scared of what he asked. She looked at him, of ending up alone, or stuck, or choosing wrong. Adrian reached for her hands. You didn't choose wrong. She searched his face, then leaned into him. The narrator's voice seemed to whisper in the background of the moment, How much truth can love survive? The wedding date was set for early spring, a small outdoor ceremony by a lake just outside the city. Affordable, quiet, beautiful in a simple way. Lena invited some co-workers from the bridal shop. Adrian invited no one. When Lena asked him about his family, he said, "There's no one left." She hugged him tightly. "Then we'll be each other's family." The words warmed him and hurt him at the same time. 2 weeks before the wedding, something changed. Lena became distracted. She smiled, but it didn't always reach her eyes. She took phone calls in another room. She checked her messages more often. Adrian noticed. He pretended not to. One night he woke up and realized she wasn't beside him. He found her in the kitchen sitting at the table with her phone glowing in her hand. She jumped slightly when she saw him. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I couldn't sleep." He nodded. "Everything okay?" "Yes," she said too fast. "Just wedding nerves." He kissed her forehead and went back to bed. But the feeling stayed. The quiet warnings. The sense that something was shifting under his feet. And still he moved forward. Because turning back now would mean admitting the lie had gone too far. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and soft light. The lake was calm, reflecting the pale blue morning like glass. White chairs stood in neat rows. Simple flowers lined the small wooden aisle. Everything was exactly as Lena had wanted. Modest, clean, honest. Adrian stood in a small changing room near the lake, adjusting his tie in the mirror. His hands were shaking. He told himself it was normal. People were nervous on their wedding day. This was not fear. This was excitement. But deep inside, something felt wrong. Jay, his co-worker from the supply store, knocked on the door. "Hey, man, you ready?" Adrian forced a smile. "As I'll ever be." Jay grinned. "Never thought I'd see you in a suit. You clean up nice." "Thanks," Adrian said. Jay hesitated. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," Adrian lied. Outside guests were arriving. Lena's co-workers laughed together. Her mother moved between rows, fixing details. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Adrian stepped out and took his place at the front. The officiant nodded at him warmly. Minutes passed. Music began. The guests stood. Adrian turned toward the aisle, his heart pounding. But Lena did not appear. The music continued, confused and uneven. Whispers spread through the chairs. Adrian frowned slightly, trying to stay calm. Then Lena's mother rushed toward him, her face white. "She's not here," she whispered urgently. "She's gone." His stomach dropped. "What do you mean, gone?" "She left," her mother said, voice shaking. "Her phone is off. Her bag is gone." The world seemed to tilt. What Adrian said softly. Before anyone could react further, a voice cut through the confusion. She didn't just leave. A woman stepped forward from the side. One of Lena's co-workers. Her name was Rachel. "She left with someone," Rachel said. "And you deserve to know why." Adrian turned slowly toward her. Rachel held up her phone. I tried to stop her, but I couldn't. She tapped the screen and showed him a message thread. Adrian stared. The messages were from Lena. "I can't do this anymore. He's good, but he's not enough. I need security. I need certainty. I can't live scared forever." The last message froze his blood. "He doesn't even know who I really need." Adrian felt his breath leave him. Rachel swallowed. "She's been seeing someone else. For weeks." The lake, the chairs, the guests, everything blurred. Who, Adrian asked, though he already felt the answer pressing down on him. Rachel hesitated. "A man named Mark. He's wealthy. He owns several properties." Adrian's knees went weak. Rachel continued, her voice filled with regret. "Lena told me last night. She said she loved you, but love wasn't enough. She said today was her last chance to choose a different life." The words hit him one by one, slow and brutal. Love wasn't enough. The guests stood frozen. Whispers turned into murmurs. Phones came out. Adrian felt every eye on him, but he couldn't move. The officiant stepped back, unsure what to do. Lena's mother covered her mouth, tears spilling down her face. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, I didn't know. Adrian said nothing. He felt empty. Not angry, not loud, just hollow. He thought of every quiet night, every shared meal, every promise. He thought of the question he had asked himself from the beginning. Would she stay if I had nothing? Now he had his answer. Jay stepped closer. Aaron, man, I'm so sorry. Adrian nodded slowly. The lake stayed calm. Birds flew overhead. Life continued like nothing had broken. Adrian stood there in his suit, abandoned at the altar of his own test. And for the first time since his mother died, he felt truly speechless. Trust collapsed in silence. The chairs were still full when Adrian finally moved. People did not know what to do. Some looked away embarrassed. Some stared curious. A few whispered his name, the wrong name, Aaron, like it was a fragile thing. Adrian stepped back from the front slowly as if the ground might give way beneath him. Jay followed him. Hey, he said softly, you don't have to stay here. Adrian nodded once. He walked past the rows of white chairs, past the flowers that now felt pointless, past the lake that reflected everything except the truth of what had just happened. When he reached the gravel path, he stopped. The sound hit him then, his own breathing, shallow, uneven. Jay put a hand on his shoulder. You want me to drive you home? Adrian shook his head. Number one, I need to be alone. Jay hesitated, then nodded. Call me if you need anything. Adrian watched him leave. When he was alone, he sat down on a low stone wall near the trees. He loosened his tie, then pulled it off completely and let it fall to the ground. He stared at the dirt for a long time. He did not cry. Not yet. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't want to look, but he did. A message from an unknown number. I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. Please don't hate me. Lena, his chest tightened so suddenly it felt like pain. He typed nothing. Another message came. I never meant to hurt you. I just panicked. Adrian's hands trembled. He locked the phone and pressed it against his forehead. This was the truth, not dramatic, not loud. Just a quiet choice she had made while he slept beside her. He stayed there until the guests were gone, until the chairs were folded, until the lake looked empty again. Then he stood and walked away. The apartment felt colder than ever that night. Lena's clothes were gone, her shoes, her toothbrush. Only a faint trace of her perfume lingered in the air, already fading. Adrian sat on the floor back against the wall. That was when the tears came. Not loud sobs, just silent, shaking shoulders curling inward, like he was trying to protect something broken inside him. He thought of his mother's voice. Promise me you'll be loved for who you are. He had tried. He had given up everything to test that promise, and he had failed. Or maybe the test had worked too well. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Graham. Adrian stared at the name for a long moment before answering. Hello, he said, his voice flat. I heard, Graham said quietly. I'm sorry. Adrian closed his eyes. It happened. Yes, Graham replied. And there's more. Adrian felt a familiar heaviness. What your disappearance couldn't stay hidden forever, Graham said. Especially not after today. People are asking questions, investors, media. Adrian laughed once hollow. Of course they are. There's something else, Graham continued. Lena's other man, Mark, he knows who you are. Adrian opened his eyes slowly. What, he recognized you from an old charity event photo, Graham said. He put the pieces together. He knows you're Adrian Cole. Silence filled the room. So she knew, Adrian said softly. Yes, Graham said. At least near the end. She didn't tell you because she wasn't sure which version of you was real. Adrian felt the last thread inside him snap. So she chose, he said. Yes. Adrian ended the call without another word. He sat there until dawn. When the sun finally rose, he stood showered and dressed. Then he made one last decision. He called Graham back. "I'm done hiding," Adrian said. "Tell them." The truth broke across the city like a wave. Headlines appeared by noon. Billionaire heir disappears, reappears after wedding day scandal. Photos of Adrian in his simple apartment flooded the internet. Stories poured out. Speculation, judgment, fascination. And Lena saw it all. She came to the apartment that evening. Adrian opened the door and saw her standing there, eyes, red hands shaking. She looked smaller. "I didn't know you would be here," he said calmly. "I didn't know where else to go," Lena whispered. She stepped inside slowly, looking around like she was seeing the place for the first time. "You're really him," she said. "All this time?" "Yes," Adrian replied. "I was." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked at her, tired beyond anger. "Because I needed to know if you loved me without it." She shook her head. "That wasn't fair." "Neither was leaving me at the altar," he said quietly. She flinched. "I was scared," she said. "I thought I was choosing safety." "And now?" Adrian asked. She looked at him broken. "Now I know I chose wrong." He felt the weight of those words, but the love he had felt was already changing into something else. Something calmer. Sadder. "I hope you find what you're looking for," Adrian said. She stepped closer. "Is there any chance?" "No," he said gently. "Not anymore." She covered her face and cried. Adrian waited until she left. Then he sat alone again. But this time the silence did not crush him. It held him. The city slowly returned to its normal rhythm. For everyone else, the story faded into something people talked about less and less. New scandals replaced the old one. New headlines pushed his name lower on the page. But for Adrian, nothing went back to how it was. He moved out of the small apartment a month later. Not because he had to, but because it had done its work. It had shown him who he was, without power, without comfort, without protection. He did not return to the penthouse. Instead, he bought a modest house near the edge of the city. It had a small garden and large windows that let in morning light. No gate, no guards. He kept some things simple on purpose. He still made his own coffee. He still walked sometimes instead of driving. He still wore plain clothes more often than suits. But he no longer hid. At work, people treated him differently again. Carefully, politely, sometimes with fear. He accepted it without fighting. He had learned something important during the months he lived as Aaron. Power could not be erased, only understood. Sometimes late at night he thought about Lena, not with anger, not even with deep sadness anymore, just with a quiet understanding. She had not been evil. She had been human, afraid, pressured, pulled in too many directions by a world that taught her love was risky and security was everything. He wondered if things could have been different. Then he reminded himself that wondering did not change truth. One afternoon, he visited the old cafe. The bell rang as he stepped inside. Mia looked up and froze for half a second. "Oh," she said, "it's you." "Yes," Adrian said gently. "It's still me." She smiled awkwardly. "Your usual?" He nodded. "If that's okay." He sat by the window again, holding the warm cup in his hands. He watched people pass by, couples, singles, strangers carrying invisible stories. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel the need to test anyone. He understood now that love was not proven by sacrifice alone, and it was not guaranteed by truth either. It was a choice, made freely, or not at all. Before leaving, he tipped Mia generously. She noticed and smiled. "Take care," she said. "You too," he replied. Outside, the air was calm. Adrian walked down the street without hurry. He did not know who he would love next. He did not know when. But he knew this. If someone chose him, they would choose him knowing exactly who he was. And if they walked away, he would survive. He looked up at the sky clear and open. Then he kept walking. quietly, whole.